Hall and Roundtable live stream. We're going to talk about a very, very important subject today, HB 5855, another gun control measure. And again, we welcome you to this live stream. And like always, we would appreciate if you would put comments or questions in the comments section there on your screen. And as always, please subscribe and follow our pages and like and share our content. Again, so we are live and hopefully on demand if you miss us at the 7 o'clock hour. Today, we're going to discuss the Illinois Majority Party's full-on attack to disarm its citizens in this great state. And so with that, I'm going to welcome to the call the leader, the chairman of the Illinois Freedom Caucus, Representative Chris Miller.
Well, thank you, Brad, and welcome all my compadres here this evening. It's great to have an opportunity to talk about this very important issue that will either keep us free or enslave us to a out-of-control government. I think one of the reasons why this bill is so important is we have a inconvenient document that seems to be constantly attacked by our radical left friends, and it's called the Constitution. You know, when you think about it, what makes the USA different than other countries is that almost everybody has a document that governs them. Most of the time it's where the government tells the people what they can and cannot do. Well, here in the good old USA, it's we the people tell the government what they can do because we have that kind of authority given to us by the Constitution. And what we see going on right now in this attack by Representative Morgan and the radical left is to try to undermine the Constitution and violate their oath of office. And personally, I think it would be a real opportunity for these guys to rather than grandstanding by trying to take away our Second Amendment rights, I think that their grandstanding could be turning in their resignations because of their violation of their oath of office.
Yeah, excellent stuff, Chris. Anything else to add before we move on?
No, I think that ought to do it for now.
All right, thank you. Next up, I want to introduce Representative Adam Niemerg with some opening comments.
Thank you very much, Brad. Folks, thanks for being with us here this evening. Hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas and everybody has a very happy New Year. Representative Miller, thank you so much for that introduction on what we're dealing with House Bill 5855. This is a complete attack on your Second Amendment rights, folks. So it's incumbent upon us as conservatives, as Republicans in the House and the Senate to stand up against this piece of legislation. And it's incumbent upon you. Call Representative Morgan's office, send emails. You can find his information at ilga.gov. Email his office, call his office, voice your opposition to this terrible bill. Because as we read this bill, it's very ambiguous. It's a complete attack on your Second Amendment. It's going to limit your Second Amendment rights. And as the framers of the Constitution intended, that shall not be infringed. So we're going to dive into the meat of this piece of legislation. We're going to get some answers here for you today. We're going to keep pushing on this. So thank you very much for being with us here this evening.
Excellent, Adam. Next up, we're going to have from Decatur, Illinois, State Representative Dan Caucus for opening comments. And Dan, you are going to get the honor to introduce our guest here this evening. Dan.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this evening. It's good to be back on our regular Tuesday schedule. The Illinois Freedom Caucus is alive and well and looking forward to the start of the next General Assembly session, the 103rd. But right now, we're dealing with the lame duck session coming up starting January 4th. We've had 3 hearings on HB 5855 up in Chicago in the Blandick building. If you haven't seen it, I believe it's archived on ilga.gov. If not, we'll figure a way to get that out to you. But today, we're joined by a very special guest, someone who's been in this fight for years and years, even though he looks younger than that. This is the executive director of GSL, John Boch. John is very gracious to give us some of his time, because John, I know you're actively involved in the group of folks that are putting together a legal challenge should this bill actually get signed into law. So welcome to the Illinois Freedom Caucus, to our Tuesday night edition. John Boch.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Thanks, all of you guys, for having me here. It's good to be here on a Tuesday evening right after Christmas. Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. Yes, House Bill 5855 by Bozo Bob Morgan. It is a train wreck for gun owners. If you've got 2 or more magazines, you're going to be a Class 2 felon under this bill if it's passed and signed into law. That's probably the majority of gun owners in Illinois have at least one firearm with a couple of magazines for it, and that puts you firmly in the category of Class 2 felony, 3 to 7 years in prison, same penalty as kiddie porn or having sex with a minor over age 13. So we're talking about a serious felony. It also bans the sale, manufacture, possession of America's favorite rifle, the AR-15, and millions more like it. It also restricts those that are under 21 can no longer touch a firearm. They can't own a firearm. They can't shoot a firearm recreationally. They can't transport a firearm anywhere. They're in a world of hurt, and there's only 2 exceptions. If you want to handle a firearm under Bozo Bob Morgan's bill, you join the military or you go hunting with somebody who's over 21 who has a FOID card. So that's pretty devastating to those under 21 who are law-abiding. Those young families that are just starting out would under this bill have no means to defend their homes and their families from the violent criminals running amok in our cities today. It would also what else? Bans 50 caliber rifles, restricts the ability of people to have these scary guns in the state of Illinois for over 24 hours for those out-of-state visitors. So that would basically end training. It's just a hodgepodge of a hot mess. And of course, we're going after this aggressively. We've joined a coalition. Dan's familiar with it. The Illinois Freedom Caucus is part of it. Also, the FFL Illinois gun shop lobbying group is part of it. There's some Second Amendment organizations a part of it, Illinois Gun Owners Together and others. Got some legal minds. We've got Todd Vandermeide, former NRA lobbyist and all-around gun guru here in Illinois. He's kind of spearheading this for us, and we've got a great bunch of people put together, and we're already taking action. We've identified individual plaintiffs to challenge this law if it gets signed into effect, or one similar to it. I know the Illinois Senate is now running with a competing bill that they're putting together, and they're going to run it when the lame duck starts there that first week of January. I suspect that bill is going to be the bill that gets passed, because they've tossed out 5855. They've seen some of the pushback on it, and they are uncomfortable with some of the pushback. So that's good. But there's a lot of stuff that's on the table, pretty dramatic. Again, if you've got 2 or more magazines of over 10 rounds, you would be a Class 2 felon under this bill. So obviously that's the majority of gun owners in Illinois. Call it 1.2 or 1.3 million minimum out of the 2.4 million and change FOID card holders in the state of Illinois. But we're working on this. We've identified a couple of law firms. We've got the individual plaintiffs. We've got a law firm out of California, the Second Amendment Law Center, that has a proven track record of winning against California's draconian gun control laws, even before this Bruin decision from the U.S. Supreme Court came down. And we're optimistic that we're going to get this struck down, but a lot of things are happening behind the scenes, left and right, to make a difference here. Personally, I think the Illinois General Assembly should maybe, instead of going after law-abiding gun owners here in Illinois, maybe, just maybe, they should turn their attention to the failing public school system. I mean, 11% of Chicago public school students can read at grade level. Yes, 87% of them graduate with a diploma. The problem is the majority of these kids can't read. The black kids can't read at grade level. They can't read the diploma they're handed when they graduate. It is awful. They have no real hope of a successful life. You know, they have little or no hope of finding a decent job, getting married, raising a family, having a career, contributing to society. Instead, these semi-literate young people are attracted to the only glamour they see is the glamorous gang lifestyle. You know, they see the money, the drugs, the guns on these social media posts. They think that's where it's at, and they've really, the only prestige they've got amongst their friends is the prestige of violence. You know, they don't have prestige for having a college degree or having a good career. Their prestige is going out and doing bad things to other people in the community. So that's going on. And it's not just Chicago. I mean, Decatur Public Schools, sorry, Dan, Decatur Public Schools, 2% of black kids there can read at grade level and 1% of them can do math. And in Mount Vernon, 0% of black students in third grade can read at grade level. And if they can't read at grade level in third grade, they're forever handicapped in their educational process because they can't read school textbooks to learn more information. So it's just a hot mess in the educational system here in Illinois. We're spending a ton of money on these kids and they're not getting properly educated. And really all they've got to look forward to is the glamorous gang lifestyle. So there's a lot of parts of this moving around here, but it's gang violence that's driving what's going on in Chicago. They're up to 700 and some homicides already this year, the most of any city in America by far. More homicides than 35 entire states had in the entire year of 2021. It's just it's awful up in Chicago, and it's just a hot mess.
Hey, John, thanks for that introduction and kind of a rundown. And I think if it'll be okay, maybe we'll just kind of go round robin of our group here, ask some questions. While I'm allowing everybody else to get time to prepare their question or to ask, question I get is from our gun shop owners. What happens to them day one if this law is passed and signed into law? What happens to gun shop owners on day one?
Well, in some ways, they're in the same boat as the rest of the millions of gun owners in Illinois who are suddenly felons. You know, they've got a bunch of product on their shelves that's not legal for them to sell to anybody except law enforcement. And yes, local law enforcement, local prosecutors may turn a blind eye to this bill. We've already had a number of counties pass sanctuary resolutions ordering their sheriffs and their prosecutors not to use county resources to prosecute this bill. But they're going to have a lot of inventory. I had one dealer ask me, what am I supposed to do with $100,000 in inventory? Eat it? And that was somebody not too far from Adams District. So there's a lot of question marks. I know that while the local law enforcement might not enforce this law and they may continue to sell these guns, you can bet the gun dealer licensing inspectors from the Illinois State Police will certainly hammer them and potentially either fine them dramatically for having these stocks of prohibited items that can't be sold to anybody except law enforcement, or they may just pull their dealer license altogether and eliminate the gun dealer's ability to run a business. So, you know, they're in a bad spot on this as well. And on top of that, what guns are going to be left to purchase after this bill passes? Revolvers? You know, after everybody's got a revolver or two, gun shops are going to go out of business because there's not going to be any other guns being sold. I mean, you can't buy America's best-selling rifle, America's favorite rifle, the AR-15. You can't buy America's hottest-selling defensive handguns if this bill passes because you won't be able to find magazines to feed them. It's just going to be awful for everybody, and I think that's the intended purpose of, you know, my little nickname for Bozo Bob is Bozo Bob Morgan. I think that's his goal. But I'm still not entirely sure that 5855 is going to be the vehicle they pass. I think the Senate bill is going to be a little less obviously out of the ballpark crazy. I think that their selling point for that Senate competing bill is going to be, hey, you know, pass this bill. This bill's reasonable. You know, 5855 was a little over the top. This one's more reasonable, so we need to pass it and just take away your guns and only make you a Class 4 felon instead of a Class 2 felon for possession of 2 or more magazines. That's what I suspect will probably end up happening.
Yeah, excellent. Gentlemen, any thoughts or questions for our guest?
I think that I do think that that's an interesting point that that John made, is that they will try to sell this thing coming out of the Senate as something reasonable. And my response to that is it's never reasonable to violate the Constitution. It's 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 nonsensical, and I think that it's just another tactic by the radical left to try to create a touchy-feely moment so they can pretend like they're really doing something to try to fix this problem. And ultimately, this problem is not going to go away quickly, mainly because at least during my 68 years, there's been an assault on our faith, there's been an assault on our families, and now there's an attack on our freedoms. And one of the reasons why we have what we have is because of fatherlessness in the home. And when you fix the family, a lot of this stuff is going to go away.
Yeah, excellent points. Adam, any thoughts?
Yes, John, thanks so much for being with us here today to give us some insight into this particular piece of legislation. Just doing some research on my own and just trying to dive into this the moment it was filed. I found that the semi-automatic rifles, the conditions and exclusions were a little ambiguous, and then there was a long list of firearms that Representative Morgan had listed as being banned. So when it looks at semi-automatic rifles, when you look at the exclusions, the exclusions should be applicable, but then the conditions are a little ambiguous. Can you speak to that a little bit about the ambiguity in this piece of legislation and the issues that we may have with what constitutes as a semi-automatic firearm?
Well, Adam, thank you. That's a great question, by the way. There's a lot of ambiguity in this bill on a number of points, and it's poorly written, quite frankly. And I really don't want to answer your question directly because I don't want to give them a roadmap for this new Senate competing bill to fix the flaws that are in this bill. Suffice to say, gun owners will be shocked at what is covered by this ban, both in terms of magazines and in terms of the firearms it covers. It doesn't just cover semi-automatic rifles. It covers some shotguns. It covers some handguns. It covers some stuff that you wouldn't suspect would ever be banned. And so there's a lot of stuff in there. There are a lot of problems in there, but we're trying to tell people not to outline some of the fatal flaws in the bill and let them go ahead and pass it as is and make it easier to overturn in court. And speaking of which, in court, the city of Naperville is facing a lawsuit from Law Weapons over their ban on the sales of semi-automatic rifles. And interestingly, this 5855 and likely this competing bill in the Senate will also contain language in there banning the sale of these particular firearms. And in Naperville, the Law of Weapons is seeking a temporary restraining order, and they're likely to get it at the circuit court level. Even if they don't get it at the circuit court level, they may get it at the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the district they're in. And interestingly, in an earlier case about a month ago, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals Chief Justice from the bench said during the oral arguments that the Second Amendment is no longer a second-class right. It is now a supercharged right. And another justice on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals said that the whole entire board has been reset by the Bruin precedent handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court, meaning all this intermediate scrutiny, all this interest balancing tests, all of those previous precedents that courts have relied on to limit our Second Amendment rights, those are all out the window. Now the Second Amendment means what it says what it means, and unless there was a law in common use across the states in 1791, that law doesn't hold water. I'll give you another example, the FOID Act. Gun Save Life has got a challenge to the FOID Act. We've filed a brief citing the Bruin precedent in our case. There were no states that had a FOID card in 1791, period. End of story. And so I look for the FOID Act to be struck down. That particular case is looking for a decision probably sometime in January. That's going to be a political earthquake when that decision is handed down. And I think the Naperville, they're likely to get a temporary restraining order before the lame duck session gets finished. And if that happens and they get that restraining order, that's going to gut this 58-55 or whatever the competing bill from the Senate is. Even before it gets a governor's signature, it's going to be gutted. So it's a lot of moving parts here, and it doesn't look real good for them to successfully pull off this gun control jihad that they've engaged in here lately to distract everybody from the terrible financial condition our state's in, the terrible schools we've got, the overwhelming problem with drugs and gangs in Chicago, and did I mention our lousy education system?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, John, there's at least 4 Supreme Court cases, back to 2008 Heller, and then the most recent was the Bruin, the New York case. Lots of Supreme Court cases that makes this really clear. I know I'm going to bring Dan on here next. Dan, I know before we went live, we were talking about the Constitution and having a copy of it in those 27 words in the Amendment 2. And so I encourage everyone to read that. I know the hearings that I've watched some of, they really want to parse that and split that out and just kind of use bits and pieces to their advantage. Dan, what's your thoughts or questions you might have here as we further this discussion?
Well, thank you, Brad. And John, I'm interested in what we're hearing from the Senate. This is the kind of the first mention that the Senate is actually going to try to get ahead of Bob Morgan, who is on a jihad, as you say. Excuse me. One of the things that we hear quite frequently is who really needs a semi-automatic rifle that's capable of firing a munition of that has such power, destructive power. And I'm reminded of a response. It was very, very simple response, a little 3-word response. And that response is, ask a Ukrainian. Think about it.
Well, Dan, good point.
Think about that. So
it's called the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs.
Correct.
It's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. The founders of this nation could never have dreamed of the internet that we're on today, or even probably electricity, or high-speed printing presses, or TV. But we don't talk about limiting the First Amendment to the media that was available in the 1790s. We encompass modern day technology and protect it with the First Amendment, just as we protected it when the nation was founded and when the Bill of Rights was passed. The Second Amendment is no different, and thanks to the Bruin decision, that has been clearly articulated in that decision, and that precedent now is binding in this entire nation to all the courts and all the legislatures, and they could ignore it at their own peril.
Well, I think that's our legal point of view, and I think it has a great deal of merit. I'm just, watching those 3 hearings, and some of the people that showed up actually nailed the problem, and the problem is that it took a horrific event, a massacre in Highland Park, a wealthy, mostly white suburb, to stir Bob Morgan and the rest of the Democrats into action. They sprung into action, after this terrible event in a very wealthy white suburb. And the folks that live in the city of Chicago were, I think, very, very pointed. This has been going on in their neighborhoods for years.
Decades.
Reading about it, talking about it, writing about it. Every Monday we get the report like it's a ball score. 32 people shot, 6 killed. Violence in every part of Chicago, Cook County, and it took an event in a white suburb to stir this group to action, which is I think is racist on its face. The other part that I think we should take away from this is that The people that live in these neighborhoods fully understand that passing 5855 in its current form will do nothing to stop the violence, the carjackings in their neighborhood. Criminals don't register guns. Criminals don't have FOID cards. When's the last time? Well, this is kind of another question. The last time they arrested somebody for murder that had a FOID card or concealed carry. Well, first of all, John, you know that they don't arrest anybody. And when they do, they put them back out on the street. So that's not probably a very good question. But
that's actually right. I've been to the Chicago gun turn-ins, and that's their solution to the gun violence, is to have a gun turn-in. These guns turned in are old guns turned in by old people who aren't driving around shooting up the city. If you want to know the guns are, just go to the Chicago Police Twitter page. Give you an example. On one day, one of the 25 police districts in Chicago, they confiscated 7 fully automatic Glock machine gun pistols. Just in the course of a day. And that's one district of 25. Where are the prosecutions for all these people with machine guns, all these gang members with machine guns? I mean, they don't exist for any intents and purposes. There's no prosecution up there. And the Democrats in Springfield, the more radical ones, they're more interested in instead of criminalizing criminals, they want to criminalize the law-abiding gun owners in Illinois in a rather serious way, while they let the criminals go with this no cash bail act. In essence, they're taking away the ability of good people in our state to protect their families from these violent career criminals who are running our streets and will continue to run our streets thanks to these soft on crime policies that they keep advocating for, legislating, and signing into law.
That's absolutely right. Yep. And Dan, you talked about a particular issue that you went into the Chicago issue and to folks up in that particular region. And there was some testimony that was given by Live Free Illinois at one of these hearings. And this particular organization is a leftist organization talking about gun violence, Black and brown communities. They're a stakeholder at the table on this particular issue. And here's what this is what they actually said on this, folks. We strongly oppose any proposed legislation that would further criminalize Black and brown communities. We're opposed to penalty enhancements for Black and brown communities, and we're opposed to the FOID card age limit being raised to the age of 21. And this is a leftist organization. So when you look at what's happening in the state of Illinois, and John, you talked about this with our schools, and folks, we've pushed back so hard on SB 818, the egregious sex ed bill. These folks in the state of Illinois, these kids that are graduating maybe have a diploma, but like you said, they're not able to read them. They turn to crime. Chris, you had talked about the breakdown of the family. Fatherless households, the mental health issue that we're dealing with in the state of Illinois caused by the governor's lockdowns. And folks, you remember the constitutionality of that being challenged. And we lived through that. So when we sit back and say, wow, a business could never be closed, or wow, our schools could never be closed, or wow, our Second Amendment shall not be infringed, that cannot happen. We are seeing it in real time happening, and they mean business. Bob Morgan means business. The governor means business. So whatever iteration they have, if they have something coming out of the Senate that's a little more watered down, this is typical Democrat playbook, folks. We're talking about removing the FOID card for people under the age of 21. There's 20,000 active FOID cards for adults under the age of 21. We're talking about a data registry that you have to fill out with a $25 fee that goes in for that firearm if you're still owning that firearm. And guess what? You purchase that firearm at some particular point in time. They have a registry of that. There's another data registry of that. They could come knock on your door. Who knows where this could go? Look at Chicago. You cannot own a pistol in the city of Chicago, yet all these gun violence, all these crimes that John just mentioned are being committed in Chicago. So, folks, we're going to continue to stand against this. John, thank you so much for being with us here today. And obviously, you look at these resolutions. I have one in my own county here, Effingham County Board here. I want to say thank you to Dave Campbell and to the folks on the Effingham County Board for filing this. They resolve that the Effingham County Board orders Effingham County shall not support and the enforcement of HB 5855, Protect Illinois Communities Act, through the use of county funds, appropriations, personnel, or property. The use of these limited resources are hereby banned. So folks stand up against this. John, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Yeah, Adam, I would, and I've talked to our county chairman here in Macon County. I would caution these folks to be less specific, because as John has said, HB 5855 may not be the vehicle. And we don't want to keep going back and passing a new resolution. I would caution these county boards to be less specific about a particular House bill that isn't even been signed into law. So just as a word of caution to your guys down there, this is the advice that I'm giving to Kevin Greenfield up here. Yes, be against the unconstitutional attack on our Second Amendment rights. Any bill, I don't care, HB, SB, I don't care what it is. We need to be on record that we're not going to enforce any unconstitutional anti-Second Amendment bill that may come out of the General Assembly and signed by the governor. So that's it. Before we wrap up, Brad, let's talk about donations. John, you know, we're working together, Freedom Caucus, GSL, IL, FFLs. Folks, help us. We need to help pay the legal expenses to file a court action and to prosecute our response to this, whatever bill comes out. So scrolling across the bottom of your screen, ffl.org, you can go on there, you can donate. We're asking every FOID card holder, send $5 in, $5. It's all, if half of us send $5 in, we'll be in good shape. You can always send more, right, John?
You betcha. You know, we've identified the individual plaintiffs already. We've identified the law firms. We need to collect about $125,000 to get this ball rolling. We're midway through that already. Our philosophy on these donations, these law firms are offering discounted rates for nonprofits, and that's us. We're not hiring any professional fundraisers. So, you know, all this money is going to lawyers. It's not going to send any gun organization staff to the Bahamas on vacation or buy a new Suburban for them. You know, we're not commingling this money with anybody in the coalition's general operating revenue. This is all separate monies from FFL Illinois, or you can donate at the Second Amendment Legal or Law Center in California. They're the California legal team that are backing our Illinois attorneys. That's a tax deductible donation for those people who are looking for tax deductibility. You can find out more information about all this at gunsavelife.com. It's scrolling across the bottom there. Again, gunsavelife.com. And 100% of the monies that we collect are going to go to fighting these or using these attorneys to fight these anti-gun bills that are rolling through the General Assembly at the lame duck session and probably later into the spring session. And if we win, which I expect we will, we may receive complete reimbursement of all of our legal expenses. And at that point, if that indeed does happen, we will likely, as a coalition, likely move to file more lawsuits to challenge other existing gun control matters here in Illinois, such as some of the prohibited locations in our Concealed Carry Act, also attacking the gun dealer licensing scheme. We'll go after that one as well. And we may pick on other laws that we feel that if we're stripped down, it would impact a great deal of Illinoisans to be able to more effectively protect their families and their homes against the violent criminals running amok, thanks to a lot of soft on crime policies and Soros-funded prosecutors.
Very good. One of the few times that I'm happy to give money to a lawyer, I have to say. Thanks for doing this, Brad.
Oh, you're welcome. Chris, any closing comments? And we'll kind of bring this to a conclusion. Chris, any thoughts?
Oh, I just think, I know y'all have heard me say this before, but the fight for freedom never ends. And this is just another battle that we have to engage in. We can't be apathetic or indifferent, because the radical left is out to destroy life as we know it. And I think it's important to be reminded that we're not free unless government is small. And as government expands, liberty contracts. And this is just another example of an expansive, out of control government trying to interfere in the lives of everyday hardworking Americans that all they want to do is be able to go to work, live their lives, raise their family as they want to, and they don't want a bunch of people with the morals of a tomcat trying to tell them how to live their lives. And there needs to be a loud message sent to Representative Morgan that we don't want anything to do with his antics, his clown show, that he's wasting the people's time here putting forth such a ridiculous bill.
Excellent, Miller. And I think we probably should put a little ticker along the bottom. If you want to know truth, logic, and common sense, this is the place to be here. And Representative Miller helps us to bring a new definition to truth, logic, and common sense. Thanks, Chris. Adam, any thoughts as we close out here this evening?
I just want to say thank you, everybody, for tuning in with us here tonight. And I think that deep down, the Democrats, they understand that this doesn't solve the problem. You know, we talked about what's going on in our public school system. We talk about the breakdown of the family. We talk about the mental health situation that is going on throughout the state of Illinois. And this is just feel-good politics, so they can say they're doing something and try to think they sleep well at night, but it does not solve the problem. So folks, thank you so very much for tuning in with us here this evening. Thank you, John, for being a part of this Facebook live stream here tonight, and Brad for putting it together.
Yeah, you're welcome. Dan, any closing thoughts? And then I want to kind of kick it back to John with some thoughts to kind of talk about his organization a little more in depth and give people a place to go. So Dan, any closing thoughts or comments on your part?
Just another quick reiteration. Please donate. Please help us fund this legal challenge. We need your help. ILFFL.com is scrolling, or FFLIL, I guess, sorry. FFIL.org. Donate, please help us. We've got the best lawyers in the country lined up. We just need to be able to afford to have them come to Illinois and put a nail in this deal. So thank you very much, Brad, and we'll see you all in Springfield next week.
Yeah. Excellent, guys. And so to that point, I just want to kind of talk real briefly here before we let John close us out. But, you know, in these 27 words, it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I think what's really important, besides all of that's really important, is the right of the people. The right of the people are spelled out in Amendment 1. It's spelled out in Amendment 4. It's spelled out in Amendment 9 and Amendment 10. The right of the people is very, very important in this discussion tonight, and has been for decades. And as we go forward, that this Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Declaration of Independence is we the people. And this is vitally important that we stay in this fight, engage in this battle. And I think the effort that John and his organization and some others across the state and potentially across the nation are putting together to fight this legally is probably the right way to go. With that, John, I want to bring you back on, and I'm just going to let you kind of close this out. Tell us a little bit about your GSL and the meetings that you have and the communication methods that you got. If you don't mind, just spend a few minutes on that as we wrap up this conversation.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Gun Save Life, we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. We've been around obviously a long time. We're very active and aggressive in our advocacy for gun rights. We defend your right to defend yourself. We have meetings in 9 cities across Illinois each and every month. We give away a gun typically at every meeting every month. So come on out. We've got our website, gunsavelife.com. Those of you who go out to sporting goods shops, gun stores, and other locations, you might find a copy of Gun News there. Pick one of those up. You can also download those from our website as well. But we have a good time. We like to say we make lemonades out of lemons here in Illinois. Obviously, we don't have the votes to stop gun control right now, and with this new legislature getting seated, it's not going to change. But we've got the court. We've got the Bruin precedent in our back pocket, and that is going to be a wrecking ball to gun control measures for years to come. Much as the left used Roe versus Wade to attack restrictions or regulations on the abortion industry, we're going to be using Bruin as a wrecking ball against all this unconstitutional gun control laws. So we have fun. We encourage you to join us. Come out, stay educated, stay informed, become a member. But yes, donate to this legal fight. There's a big post on the top of our Gun Save Life page about this effort, and there's links to the FFL Illinois fund where you can donate. I've donated myself. Dan suggests $5. I suggest donate what you can. If you're able to afford more, by all means do so. You know, I donated $200 to the FFL Illinois fund, and I also sent $200 out to the California Second Amendment Law Center fund. But donate what you can. If you can afford a few $1,000s, or you've got a business or an organization, by all means, try to see if you can donate some more. Again, we're halfway to that $125,000 to get this thing ready. Our intention is to have a lawsuit ready to file within hours of the governor signing this bill, whichever one it is, if it's 5855 or if it's a competing bill from the Senate. We'll be ready to file a challenge to it within hours of the governor's signature. We expect to get a temporary restraining order within a matter of a couple of weeks. And if we don't, we will appeal it as appropriate. And we expect to come out triumphant on this to block it and basically rub Bozo Bob's nose in the humiliation of defeat when the courts rule his precious baby unconstitutional. We're going to rub their noses in the humiliation of defeat. So thank you, guys. Thanks for being outstanding legislators. I know they called you the Magnificent Seven at one time. It's the Magnificent Five today or thereabouts. Thanks for having me on, and God bless you and the work you do, and keep it up. And you're all great friends to freedom in America. And when it comes to liberty, moderation in the pursuit of liberty is no vice. Or
Excellent.
no virtue, I should say.
Excellent. Yeah, John, thank you, and Chris, Dan, and Adam. Appreciate it. Again, we talked about the gun news. Be sure and find one of those at your local gun dealer, and there's a schedule of all your meetings in there. I think that's a great place to come and have fellowship with fellow like-minded folks and to find out what's going on. John, I know you always give a great presentation, and many times
it's not that good.
I'm going to say people will not be disappointed to come to one of these events somewhere. So with that, guys, stay tuned in for more truth, logic, and common sense. We're going to try to get on a routine schedule with these things every Tuesday night. We hope to have some live events again, hopefully coming in the spring, but we go back to Springfield a week from now for Lame Duck Session. We'll continue to stream out stuff as it develops. So with that, guys, have a great evening, great day. Like and share our content, and we really appreciate it. Good evening.